Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Thanks for joining us for insightful analysis and enlightening discussions. Well, today we have a treat for you. We're going to go over the highlights of Deloitte's annual real estate report. And there's something big about it this year. For 16 years, they've looked at 1 year. And this time, they're looking at the future for several years out. Please welcome my guest, Bob O'Brien. He's Vice Chairman and leader of Deloitte Global Real Estate Practice. Bob, thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Michael. Great to be on.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And, this will give folks an outlook, over the next several years, including the trends that will impact how properties are constructed, how they're managed, how they're sold, how they're leased. And kind of the day-to-day operations, and a great look at the future. And Bob, tell us why after 16 years, now your 17th year of this publication, instead of going from 1 year, you went to several.
Yeah, during the last decade, Michael, real estate's been on a pretty wild ride, and it's been fun to write the outlook in terms of what's going to be different in the following year. But as we sat down to do our 2016 outlook, didn't find anything that interesting to write about in terms of what might be different than 2015. In the meantime, we looked more broadly, and we saw these businesses being disrupted by technology in other sectors. And so we said, what could some of these macro trends we see out there, how could they impact real estate? And recognizing that investors, typically underwrite their real estate investments looking out 7 or 10 years, we said, okay, well, what should investors be considering looking further out? And so this is an outlook for what real estate ought to look like in 2025, not 2016.
Well, I think that's fantastic because, look, if you're not already prepared for what's going to happen next year, you're not going to have time to be prepared, right? Let's look out a little further. So I think that's a great move. And you look at, there's a lot more technology being delivered to the commercial real estate space than we've ever seen before. And the commercial real estate, I think, has the power, it has the engine now, right? So in this recovery, there's more money to spend on technology, to adapt to technology. And let's get right into it. There's kind of four main areas of your report, and the first one is collaborative economy. So tell us about that.
Well, technology and other trends are really changing how tenants and others use real estate, right? And the collaborative economy is part of that. And so probably the most obvious place to talk about it is with respect to office space. The way people use office space today is different than it was 5 or 10 years ago. The need for file cabinets, single-person, closed-door offices, all those things have become out of date. You're working as part of teams. Technology handles a lot of that one-on-one communication. Very rarely now do I make a one-on-one phone call. Typically I'm participating with a team on a conference call and sitting in space where a number of us can sit together. And there's a real recognition that collaboration can really drive value for a business. So can you create space that is more collaborative? And so we see that. It is dramatically changing how people use office space. Collaboration is also driving, or what I'll call the sharing economy, is also changing how other spaces are used. When you talk about retail, obviously e-commerce and online shopping has really changed how retailers operate, how they use real estate, consequently what retail real estate looks like and what makes retail real estate successful. But in the meantime, you also have things like pop-up stores. And, pop-up stores really wouldn't work 10 or 15 years ago, but they work today because the pop-up stores can leverage social media to make customers aware of where they're at. And so really, it is changing how real estate is used, not necessarily the technology used by real estate companies, but the technology available to the ultimate consumer.
Right. The consumer is much more aware. They're much more empowered now. And you give some examples in your report, and one is Liquid Space. Tell us what they're doing in the office space.
Well, Liquid Space recognizes that a business's need for space is not fixed. That certain days of the week or in conjunction with certain projects, a business's need for space will fluctuate over time. And they've developed a model where businesses would have access to extra space or be able to give away, or in effect sell, sublease, extra space to manage their cost for space. And so, when you think about a business that, for example, has a lot of people out on the road but returning on Fridays for Friday meetings, does it make sense that they carry all the space they need for Friday,
Right.
the other 4 days of the week?
Right. All right. No, that's a good point, and I think there are more shared spaces today. We had a healthcare practitioner on the show a couple weeks ago, and they're using space 1 day a week, and there's other healthcare providers using it the other 4 days a week instead of that space just sitting empty. And you gave a few more examples in your report, like Uber and Lyft, and some things that these companies are using in Zipcar. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when you think about Uber and Zipcar and Lyft, right, they're all an opportunity to use an asset more efficiently, right? Greater than 95% of the time, a car sits unused. 300 million people in the U.S. today, 250 million cars out there. So they're not being used all the time. And so consequently, Uber, Lyft, Zipcar figured out, hey, there's a more efficient way for people to use cars. It drives the cost down for the consumer. It gives them cars when they need it, but they don't have them when they don't need it. Can you apply that to real estate space as well?
Right. And then Airbnb is doing it in the hospitality world, right?
Exactly. So if you have a extra room in your place or an apartment you're not using, Airbnb gives you an opportunity to generate some revenue from that, to share it, and most interestingly, and when I really think about the consumer here, Airbnb gives them an opportunity to really create a customized experience for their stay, and a frequent Airbnb user gets the benefit of Airbnb really getting to know them from their previous transactions and suggesting stay options that really might appeal to them based on some preferences they've demonstrated in their previous stays.
Right, and that's what the consumer wants, right? They want it custom now.
They certainly want it custom, and this effectively empowers them to do that.
Well, I better get home soon to make sure my wife doesn't rent out my man cave. And then there's a quote in here, the New York Attorney General estimated that as many as 72% of the units rented through Airbnb were in violation of state zoning regulations or other zoning laws. What does that do to this disrupt of Airbnb?
Well, it indicates the natural tug of war that's happening out there between the regulation of existing businesses and innovation, right? And so it does create challenges for the regulators to figure out how do we really adapt to what is exponential change, and for these disruptors out there, for these innovators out there, they can't ignore the regulators, right? They need to have a regulatory strategy to deal with, potential issues like the one being raised here.
Well, and that'll be interesting because when my wife rents out the man cave, I've smoked a cigar in there before. So, maybe you don't want to stay somewhere where somebody smoked a cigar, right? Well, how could real estate owners, operators, people in the business utilize this collaborative economy to do better?
Well, one of the things that I have seen over the span of really the last 18 months is an amazing number of real estate-oriented startups being developed to try to figure out ways to make more efficient use of real estate, to connect the tenants and the owners of real estate, to provide new technologies to owners of real estate to better connect with the consumers. So we've also seen a great deal of interest in the venture capital community.
And Bob, I want
real estate related.
And let's take a short break. I want to hear more about how our listeners could take advantage of this collaboration. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you in part by your friends at Bull Realty. When your business requires proven performance, visit bullrealty.com or call 800-408-BULL. Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. We're talking with Bob O'Brien, who is with Deloitte, and we're talking about their 17th annual report, Real Estate on Outlook. And this year they're looking way out, which I think is very smart to look ahead. There's been so much change going on in commercial real estate, especially around technology. And before the break, we were talking about collaborative economy. And Bob, you were telling us that there's some ways that the real estate industry may take advantage of this.
Yeah, I was mentioning the fact that we've seen a tremendous number of startups in the, trying to innovate in the real estate industry, and we also see venture capital firms increasingly interested in trying to back businesses that are looking to disrupt the real estate industry. And so our recommendation to the existing players in the real estate industry is to get to know these startups out there, understand where they're beginning to focus, and look for opportunities to partner or affiliate with them. It will help keep the industry's fingers on the pulse of changes that may be coming down the road. Right.
And you have some examples in your report, like Vernado Realty Trust working with, who is it, WeWork. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so WeWork has come up with an interesting concept of effectively renting space that then can be shared space for multiple tenants, really geared towards startups and organizations just getting started. And so WeWork rents the space and then effectively invites startups to use the space. And so, that's a different use than and different type of tenant than a major landlord may be used to dealing with. And but WeWork has had tremendous success in terms of they've been one of the largest, if not the largest, leaser of space in New York during the course of the past year.
Interesting. And one of the things you emphasize in your report for owners of real estate is to be flexible, right? Create a flexible environment for flexible lease terms.
Yeah, and that gets to our point earlier around tenants are beginning to have more expectations around, in effect, customized leases. Flexible space is the primary driver of that. The way their workers work has changed, and consequently, they're looking for flexibility to deal with that change.
Yeah.
We also think that creates opportunities for the landlords as well, because it may create, in effect, dynamic-type pricing opportunities as well.
Right. I mean, that's a good point. We took over leasing of a building that we're doing right now. We're taking over leasing of an office property, and even the owner came to us and said, "Look, I'm thinking about turning in a large section of this building into temporary rental," and ask our opinion. So, it's everyone's seeing it now, aren't they?
They really are. We think this is a trend that will accelerate over the next few years.
Okay. Well, one of the next issues you have here is relating to brokerage and leasing space and the changes there from technology. Tell us about that.
Well, there have been a lot of industries out there that have been, in effect, disintermediated, right, and more of a direct connection between somebody who has something and somebody who wants something. And so when you apply that to a real estate context, is there a way to more closely connect the owners of real estate with the potential users of real estate? This is an area where we have seen a lot of activity in terms of startups, developing technology, gathering and providing information around available space in a market, rates in a market, that sort of thing. And so it's becoming increasingly challenging for leasing and brokerage firms to, in effect, maintain their role in the market. Their role is going to need to evolve over time.
Right. That's interesting you say that, because I felt like we were a technology company back when we started in 1998, and we've always used technology to our advantage. And I guess that's what all of our companies are going to need to do. And you got companies like Hubble and 42 Floors and ROFO that you mentioned in your report. They're kind of driving that change, aren't they?
They are. And, what's challenging for an existing real estate player, right, is disrupting themselves.
Right.
And adapting new technologies, new business models, new, interfaces with their clients and customers to change the way they do business. The startups don't have that legacy business model that they need to, that they're wedded to, and so that's where we think there's real value in terms of understanding what they do, and the concept of, and we highlight the concept of disrupt or be disrupted, right? And so, we think existing real estate firms are going to have to challenge whether they need to disrupt themselves.
Right. And then you have companies like Comstack and Deloitte that are crowdsourcing lease information. I know that's one of the things that that people come to a tenant rep for. Is like, all right, well, we know the market, we know the deals that are getting done, but more and more people can find out some of that information, tenants-wise.
There are challenges out there, Michael,
Mm-hmm.
In terms of standards for that information and being able to gather that information and make it available in a way that really feeds, tenants' analytic tools or property owners' analytic tools to really take advantage of it. But people are trying to work through that currently. We think those standards will be developed, the interfaces will improve, and it'll have a dramatic impact on the real estate industry over the next few years. Yeah,
I agree. I think our tenant rep business has become more of a consultant business where we're looking at their overall business plans, and we're more a consultant than we were back in the day when we're the only ones that had the information on the space, right?
Yeah, the way, in very simple terms, the way I would describe it is the relationship. It's becoming more of a relationship than transaction-based, right? And
right.
So to be able to consult, to be able to provide advice is becoming way more important than just being able to close a transaction.
Right, right. Well, how can real estate owners and real estate companies take advantage of this activity, this new leasing environment?
Well, I do think understanding the new sources of information, the new tools that are out there, they're growing dramatically and having a meaningful impact on the business. And so getting a better understanding of who some of the startups are out there. We think that developing strategic affiliations with the startups provide great insights in terms of what they're doing and where the market may be heading.
Mm-hmm.
And destructing yourself, right, in terms of finding ways to do business in different ways that may more closely meet what tenants and landlords are expecting today.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good tip, and sometimes people get enough information to hang themselves as well. They get some information and feel like they can go it alone, and then they make some mistakes along the way. So I think having a consultative practice where you're doing more than opening a door and showing space is what a lot of tenant reps in our industry have been kind of leaning their business toward. And all right, we're going to have to take a short break, but we've got some more great information, and I think this is a fantastic report because, again, like we said earlier, you got to look further out than a year or you're going to be behind. So next we're going to talk about the war for talent and how that's going to impact real estate and the occupiers of real estate. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back. Xceligent, the resource professionals like CCIMs, CBRE, JLL, Colliers, and Bull Realty use for market intelligence. Commercial Search is the site to market and find available properties to buy, sell, or lease all over the country. Visit commercialsearch.com. Welcome to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. We always like to have fun here. We're talking to Bob O'Brien with Deloitte, and we're talking about their 17th edition of their outlook on real estate. They are looking real far out this year, which I think is a great move. And the next concept that is in this report is war for talent. And I certainly think this is a big thing as the job market has improved, office space use changing. There certainly is going to be a war for talent. And Bob, what are some of the aspects out there that are creating this situation?
Well, we've seen great job creation, as you mentioned, Michael, over the last 5 or 6 years. And so we're really just beginning to see the war for talent. We forecast that there's going to be a shortage of college graduates with science, technology, engineering, and math degrees to fill the types of jobs that are being created in the future economy. And so, we show a gap of about 23 million people in the U.S. in terms of projecting out the millennials going to college and the number of new jobs needed in those areas. We ultimately come up with a gap of about 23 million.
Pretty big
so
gap.
It is a big gap, and it's going to create intense competition for those who come out with those types of degrees. And those people will have, in many respects, the opportunity to call the shots in terms of where they work, the type of places they work, where they locate, and we think that'll have a meaningful impact on real estate.
Right. So if you were your child's in college right now, what kind of degree would you tell them to get?
Well, certainly, the STEM degrees would be very appealing. I do think there are opportunities to get degrees in, financial services and business, where there's also been a great deal of demand.
Yeah. Well, what about immigration? Can that fill the the gap for talent? Can we bring some people in from other countries?
Well, I think that's really one of the arguments around immigration reform, Michael, is that we do have the best schools in the world for those types of studies. There's a great deal of demand from students around the world to come to the U.S. universities and study in the STEM areas. And revised immigration laws would help keep them, and they very well could help fill that gap. The gap is going to be exacerbated by the fact that, many of us baby boomers are going to be retiring over the course of the next 10 years as well. Right. And so that exacerbates the gap. Right.
So, somebody's got to fill our shoes, right?
Exactly.
And let's talk about the percentage of employees that will be temporary or contractor type employees moving forward.
Yeah, we've already seen an increase during the course of the last decade in independent contractors or temps or freelancers. A lot of the opportunities being created in today's business world facilitate that. It's we talked about shared real estate space. These would be in effect shared employees, and so we've estimated that by 2020, almost 40% of the workforce will be freelancers, temps, independent contractors, or in effect solo entrepreneurs.
Yeah, well, that's interesting also to see how the IRS is going to handle that. Well, how will all this impact commercial real estate, this war for talent?
Well, a couple of things. One is all around location, right? Real estate's all about location, location, location. In this war for talent, companies are going to need to locate their jobs where people want to work. We've clearly seen in the last couple of years companies moving their headquarters into major urban cities because the millennials desire that 24/7 work, live, play lifestyle. There are going to be some cities that win out on this. There are going to be some cities that lose. And so anticipating where these jobs where companies will want to be that'll be generating these types of jobs to appeal to, a very heavily recruited population is going to be important. When you look at that 40% of freelancers and contract workers and that sort of thing, that is yet another indication of the importance of flexible space and creating that kind of flexible space for those types of folks in their own work, and also for those types of folks that are supporting companies, larger companies, on projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And your report says that you predict 75% of the workforce in 2030 will be millennials, and they want that mixed use. They want to walk to work. Stay tuned. We'll have more on the war for talent and more on the future of real estate. I'm Michael Bull. We'll be right back.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you in part by your friends at Bull Realty. When your business requires proven performance, visit bullrealty.com or call 800-408-BULL.
Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. My guest is Bob O'Brien with Deloitte, and we're looking at some of the highlights from the 17th edition of their Real Estate Outlook. And as we mentioned before, they're looking out many years this year because of technology and the changes in the workplace environment and the real estate environments all around us. Most of it impacted by technology. And one of the things that we're talking about is the war for talent, and like you said, Bob, we're already seeing it. I see more of the companies that we rep on their space are concerned with retention. They're concerned with recruiting and creating an environment that's great for their employees. And one of the things that you mentioned in your report is the square footage per employee should continue to shrink.
Yeah, we are predicting that it will continue to shrink. So it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 250 square feet per employee in the year 2000. We expect it to drop to 150 square feet per employee in 2017.
Wow.
And ultimately, as workplaces become even more nimble, we would expect to see a further decline to 90 to 100 square feet.
Yeah, that is amazing, and that means a lot to owners and developers of office buildings, doesn't it, and how they're going to have to manage and retrofit those buildings.
Yeah, it does, in part because, one of the things I've highlighted in some of our discussions around our own space is you need a lot more electrical running to these individual workspaces as well, and creates challenges with building codes and everything else. But we do see that, the office is becoming more of a meeting point than where people come in every day. And as a meeting point, how that space is used is very different.
Yeah, that's a good point. Even in our own office here, we have a big coffee shop and big common areas and a lounge. It really looks like a coffee shop with big screens, and people like to hang out. And it's kind of the way people are working today. And one of your takeaways on the War for Talent section of your report talks about mixed use and the live, work, play kind of being a more dominant role. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so when we survey and see the work habits of the millennial generation, they like to live, work, and play in close proximity. Many of them don't own cars. They're leveraging the Ubers and Lyfts and Zipcars that we talked about before. They also tend to not have set hours for working. So not only are they looking for flexible space, but they're looking for flexible hours as well. They're looking to work anywhere, anytime.
Sounds like they're spoiled, Bob.
Technology affords them that opportunity, and they're taking advantage of it.
Right. They're a little spoiled, right?
or savvy, depending on how you want to look at it.
It's probably savvy, not spoiled. And then one of the other takeaways you have is looking at immigration and maybe changing that.
Yeah, well, I think ultimately the U.S. has to recognize that this war for talent isn't only between companies; it's also between countries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to maintain our country's competitive edge, particularly in view of that gap that we were talking about a few moments ago in terms of graduates with science, technology, engineering, mathematic degrees, it's likely the U.S. is going to have to adapt the immigration laws to be able to fill the needs that this economy has.
That's a good point. It is a war for talent between countries as well, and especially if Trump gets in there and builds a big wall, we may need to have some great immigration policies, bring in the kind of talent, the kind of educated employees that we're going to need to fill these, 23 million shortage?
Exactly. And as I mentioned before, the U.S. has a secondary educational system that is in great demand.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, with that in mind, one should look at maybe investing in student housing. That should do well. And then also for office building owners, I think one of the things you put in your report here is they need to look really close and hard at the tenant experience that they're creating there, right?
We talked a little bit before about the expectations consumers have today about a customized experience and the value they place on relationships. Tenants are no different, right? They are looking for, and expect a customized experience. They value the relationship, and so consequently, we think that real estate owners really ought to be getting closer to their tenants and taking the opportunities that technology, for example, provides to get closer to their tenants.
Right, and one of your takeaways in the report there is to kind of look at areas, properties that are in areas that are going to create that mode, that live, work, play, where people are going to want to work, right?
Well, exactly. And when you think about the 24/7 city, and you think about millennials looking for flexible hours, right? The real estate piece of that becomes very important in terms of facilitating that.
Right. You want to be in that area where you're going to attract the employees because they want to live there, they want to shop there, they want to play there, right? They want it all together. Like you said, they're savvy.
They're savvy, and for companies to be able to get those types of employees, they're going to need to locate in the right spots.
Right, and that may make it a great place to invest in. Well, stay tuned. We'll have to take a short break. When we get back, we'll talk about the last mile. This may be one of the most important concepts we'll cover today. Stay with us. I'm Michael Bull. This is the Commercial Real Estate Show. We'll be right back.
Xceligent, the resource professionals like CCIMs, CBRE, JLL, Colliers, and Bull Realty use for market intelligence. Commercial Search is the site to market and find available properties to buy, sell, or lease all over the country. Visit commercialsearch.com.
Welcome back to the Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Bull. Thanks for being with us. My guest is Bob O'Brien. He's Vice Chairman and leader of Deloitte Global Real Estate Practice. We're talking about their 17th edition of their Real Estate Outlook. And Bob, the last one is called The Last Mile. And that's real important in industrial and retail today, isn't it?
It is. So, I think many of your listeners are probably already experiencing the expectations of consumers around same day or next day delivery has really been rising over the past couple of years, and it's getting increasingly competitive amongst the e-commerce retailers, bricks and mortar retailers, delivery services, all trying to dramatically change that so-called last mile of providing goods ultimately to the consumer.
Yeah, and one of your facts you have in here is, and I don't know if I have exactly right, I'm not looking at it, but it was something like 1 in 4 online consumers will not follow through with the sale if they can't get it that day or the next day?
Yeah, exactly. So they're looking for immediate, roughly immediate delivery. And so does a retailer ultimately lose that sale, or does the customer ultimately just, drive to the local mall and pick up the good in person as opposed to having it delivered to them? And that's not clear.
Yeah.
But it obviously indicates the desire among consumers for rapid delivery.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, losing 25% of your sales is huge. And there's some companies that are kind of disrupting here, or helping out, maybe is a better word for it, like Amazon Prime and Google Express. And tell us about these companies and what they're doing.
Yeah. So Amazon Prime, Google Express are demonstrating the ability to deliver rapidly, and one of the ways they're doing that is by, in effect, building warehouse and logistics facilities closer to the consumer. Back when you simply were delivering goods to a store, you had regional distribution centers that might be out in the middle of nowhere, but convenient in terms of the highway and railway networks, and we're just focused on delivering goods to stores in a region. Today, with consumers expecting delivery directly to their homes, and expecting it to happen rapidly, what you see are smaller warehouses being built closer to the consumers.
Right, and then you have some companies that are partnering with some of these new companies like Sidecar Deliveries and Uber Rush to help with this last mile, right?
Well, exactly. So they're seeing opportunities to deliver, directly from stores, whether those stores are at a mall or another type of retail center, directly to the consumers. Uber Rush is leveraging, in effect, the driver network that they have to also serve as a delivery company, not solely a transportation company.
And we're short on the end of the show here, but tell us quickly about 3D printing and how that may evolve.
Well, as 3D printers become more prevalent, it's going to allow consumers to request custom-made goods and receive delivery very quickly. So it's going to bring the manufacturing closer to the consumer ultimately.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I want something that'll make it in front of me, right?
Well, just think about it when you want to go buy shoes, right? The shoe is made right in front of you at the size you want, the colors you want, and so on.
I like it. I think I'm spoiled too. Bob, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you being with us.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, thank you,
Pleasure.
Bob. And we'll have a link to this report on the website if Deloitte and Bob are okay with that. So check the site at creshow.com. And we have some great shows coming up for you. So check the show website under Next. We're going to do a show on office, retail, industrial. We're going to have some shows on crowdfunding, another one of the disruptors changing commercial real estate. And so be sure and join us next week. And until then, be sure you lead, learn, and laugh. And join us for the Commercial Real Estate Show.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty, a great place to do business. Xceligent, information for the professionals. And Commercial Search, properties for sale and lease. To access these companies or for additional videos, podcasts, and articles, visit creshow.com.